he was right that we have immigration-related problems that are huge, and I think won't be solved in decades to come. This is something we're going to live with in Sweden for a long, long time.
We're gonna go meet with this guy Ivar, who is a journalist, he's a personality, and apparently has a really good perspective on what's going on here, though it might be controversial. I don't know, I'm not Swedish. It'll be interesting though. Is the media covering up refugee crime in Sweden?
It's a tough issue, because if you ask Swedes if they trust media, they do, to a large extent, trust the media, and we are exceptional in that regard. We trust our broadcasting services, our public service, have a great trust in them. But when it comes to these issues, the trust is very low. It's the lowest in Europe, if you look at the polls. Well, I think it's over 60% that thinks that the media is not telling the whole truth about immigration and immigration-related issues. In Sweden, for a long time, it was sort of considered racist or xenophobic to even question, just like, is this level of migration sustainable? Is it a good idea? Or to question how well the integration was going. You were always asked about your motives, and all this changed in a very, very short period of time. During 2015, during the crisis. So our government basically went from saying, we can do it, we've done it before and we're doing great, and in 2 weeks later we're shutting the border. What we've had in Sweden is that the journalists and the politicians have been walking in lockstep when it comes to this issue, and these issues that are related. So mainstream viewpoints have been labeled as fringe viewpoints or extremist far-right. The more you're interested in this, the more facts you have, the less legitimate you've been considered. It's basically, you could compare it to porn. I mean, the more you know about porn, the less credible you are with an argument about porn. Like, I watch all the pornos in the world. That would just take away your credibility.
Yeah.
And it's been the same with immigration. Like, I know all the facts, I know the pitfalls, the benefits, the costs, everything. But why are you so interested in these issues? I mean, what's your motive really? Like,
you must be a racist.
Yeah, you must be racist to even be interested in this. So that's basically been the consensus for a long time. It wasn't always like this, but since the late 90s or beginning of the 2000s, it's been like this.
So you're saying the media has been just following the lead of the government in terms of how the narrative on immigration has been?
Yeah, I would say that's a Swedish trait to. We have like one big consensus, and then we all follow the consensus. And I think it's a little bit stronger in Sweden. We are great at cooperating with each other. We trust each other to a large extent. But the downside of this is that we have a hard time saying the hard truths. This policy isn't working. It's not working for Sweden as a country, it's not working for our systems, and it's not working for the refugees either. I mean, we had a lot of children who just disappeared, and the police was so understaffed that they saw the children coming here to the train station, but they didn't have the manpower to even control where they were going. So they just came strangers, people they didn't know who they were, picked up strange children arriving at the train station, and just disappeared. And nobody knows where they went, and they're like.
Gone.
I'm not sure the total number, because it sort of comes with the territory of something being unknown. But, I mean, who knows what happened to those children?
This is terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It sounds like the police have lost control.
For a short while there, when it came so many people during the autumn in 2015, the police and the Swedish official had lost some measure of control, yes. I would say, during the migration flow, and it was, I mean, it was the same in all of Europe. I mean, all of Europe lost control of the migration flow, but a lot of them wanted to come to Sweden. The picture is much more. I think there's been a lot of great pieces being written after the Fox News segment and Donald Trump tweets. So I'm thankful for that, because now we have a more nuanced debate. But he was right that we have immigration-related problems that are huge, and I think won't be solved in decades to come. This is something we're going to live with in Sweden for a long, long time. It's not like all the migrants coming here are bad people. I mean, we have migrant groups that are doing fine and doing great. I mean, Bosnians who came in the 90s, for example, from the Yugoslav war, they're doing great, and they're educating themselves and they're being integrated into the society. Same with the Iranians who came in the 80s and 90s, and Kurds. A lot of them are doing great. They used to live in these areas, a lot of them, and then they moved out. Same with the Eastern Europeans who came earlier. But the new thing we have, because of the large flows, because it began sort of in 2011, the flow of migration started increasing. So when the migration crisis hit, we already had a crisis in the system. So it was just a bloated system, and people were already stuck in the system.
Why are people telling us that no-go zones don't exist?
Instead of debating the hard issue, like why are people burning cars? Why are people throwing stones at ambulances? Why are people tricking ambulances to come into these areas and then attack the personnel who are trying to help people? I mean, these are real issues. You can't put out. People have died because of this, because the ambulances need police escort in some of these areas. The police need police escort. You go 2 cars every time, because one car has to watch the other car when the other police are doing their business. Instead of debating these issues, and that people don't feel safe enough to even talk to the police or bear witness in a court of law, you debate the semantics. Saying these things, I have been labeled a racist for saying these things, but perhaps to a lesser degree now than it used to be.
Wow.
If you see the new fault line between globalists and nationalists, we are at the far end of the globalist scale, I would say. So it's very hard for like more nationalists oriented arguments to get traction in Sweden.
But there's been the rise of the Swedish Democrats, who
Yeah.
in this country they're like the right wing, the Trump supporting kind of people, right?
Yeah, even though they have been very firm, like distancing themselves from Trump up until he said these remarks about Sweden. Then he said they thanked Trump for that, but
Interesting.
because he made the debate live again in Sweden. Very mainstream argument that's been the majority in Sweden since measurements were. You start to take a measurement of the polling for this attitude towards immigration, has been that we don't want more migrants. We want less of them. It's been the majority of the plurality since the beginning of the 1990s, and still it's been labeled as a racist or a fringe argument. So that's one of the reasons that they're gaining more support, I would say. We need to have much stricter immigration policies than we have right now, because it's a sort of just because we got away from the acute crisis in 2015, people sort of like relaxed now because the flow has lessened, but it's still very high, and we need a pause in the immigration to Sweden, and we need, because we are sort of the last stop for a lot of these migrants, and we need to just say that wherever you are, stay where you are. I mean, if you come from Denmark, if you come from Germany, we need to set much harder, play ball harder with the other EU countries, and our government. All Swedish governments, we trust in the multilateral organizations. We always talk about the UN, the EU. So they're not so good at playing hardball, because we're the world consciousness.
So,
I mean, that's one thing, and then you have the law and order thing. Like, we have so many young people committing crime, and they commit really brutal crimes. So you had a case where 16 and 17-year-olds kidnapped people in an area in Sweden, and then extorted money from the code for the Visa card, and they threatened to kill them and their family, and they did it for 5 people. Police took them in, but they are too young, and it's full in all of places where they could go and be taken care of. So they just let out again. And they immediately commit crime again. So this is this is the problem if you go to Rosengård or these areas. A lot of the people there are very young. We've had issues with this because the last time we did a check in Sweden about the ethnicity or the background of people committing crime, it was in 2005, and then it was like 5 times more likely that somebody foreign-born committed a sex crime than a native-born. So they don't want to make those kind of statistics anymore.
Because it's racist?
Yeah, it's basically, we already know, they say. We already know. But then if somebody says, like, when the Sweden Democrats wrote the article in the Wall Street Journal, or Trump says something, then the government will say stuff like that. That has no support in statistics. So they will use statistics to say that that you can't know because we don't have the correct statistics, and then they will, yeah. So
I heard that the Swedish Parliament just turned down another bill that would have done an analysis on the crime and national origin.
Yeah, and I would say that you have to do that. And one of the issues is that to understand what we're facing, I mean, it's not just like, it's not in people's race to commit crime. If you go back in Sweden, like 500 years, we were killing each other to a large extent, and then our king said that if you kill each other, I will kill you, and then everybody stopped, because that's what we had, a very strong central power. So I mean, there are mechanisms here that you can work with. I mean, very violent countries have been able to lessen the crime. I mean, it's hard, but you must understand the issue before you can tackle it.
Malmö was the wrong city for people to think was the danger zone, I guess. While we were there, somebody just outside of Stockholm was shot in the face. I don't know where people got the idea, or I should say I do know where they got the idea. It's been played up in the press that Malmö is the really dangerous part of Sweden, and they highlight it in this way, but the reality is there are significantly worse places. And I think it has more to do with the cities are much bigger, Gothenburg and Stockholm, compared to Malmö. There's a story of an 8-year-old kid who got killed in a grenade attack in Gothenburg. So it's interesting that before we came here, everyone said, go to Malmö. We're in Stockholm now, and there's a few suburbs that are considered particularly dangerous, like Rinkeby, which we may go to later, and that's where the riot was, you know, a week or so ago. All the cars were set on fire. We don't really know what we can expect other than, look, in a bigger city you see more crime. That being said, it's often said that you can't compare what's happening here in Sweden to the United States. The United States has way more crime. But that doesn't mean the Swedish people should tolerate new crime that's been popping up. So the people here who are concerned about what's happening have every right to be. And I hate to say it, but a lot of Americans have just normalized the amount of violence in our country. And so they kind of shrug when people in Sweden get upset.